And here we are again, Nikki, for another weekend wrap. How are you going tonight?
Probably a little bit warmer than last week, but not by much.
Yeah, it just shows how cold last week was because it's bloody freezing. If I all of a sudden drop out, it's because the roof's been blown off my house.
That or Telstra, the lines have gone down.
Yeah, something like that. It's pretty wild and woolly up here at the moment, but we'll soldier on, obviously. And we do have Macca coming on tonight, but the reason we were a little bit late is because he's having a few little technical issues. So we'll press on, and hopefully Macca will be able to join us in the not-too-distant future. So, Nikki, before we get on to the train wreck that was our weekend game, I guess we'd better have a look at some results.
Because there were some interesting ones.
Interesting results, not too many favourable results, except for probably the Bulldog game, but let's start from the beginning. We had the Kangas getting up quite comfortably over Collingwood by 40 points in the end, 124 to 84. I thought it might have been a closer game, but Collingwood really didn't give a very good account of themselves at all. On Saturday, we had the Swans getting really pushed by Carlton, end up getting up by just 6 points up there at the SCG, 10-14 to... sorry, my screen just refreshed. 10-14 to 10 goals 8. We had the Suns counting for the Dockers up there at Metricon, 16 goals 9, 105 to 12, 9, 81. West Coast squeaked over. I thought the D's were going to do us a favour and get up, but West Coast, despite having a massive amount of less disposals and just about every stat on the thing, got up by 6 points in the end, 10 goals 6 to 8 goals 12. We had Saints giving us a bit of a leg up and getting over the Bulldogs, that poor Mitch Wallace, that terrible broken leg injury.
Oh,
shocker.
That was like the Harry Potter film when the arm goes floppy.
Yeah, it was nasty.
I hate seeing that bit.
Such an innocuous incident as well. It must have had some sort of hairline fracture there or stress fracture or something already, I reckon. But anyway, sorry, go on.
Listening to after the game, where they're doing they were talking about stuff and the injuries, and we were, oh, hang on, what injuries? And they said, oh, well, Redpath, they think might be out for the season. And then they said, and Wallace broke his own leg. And we're going, what? Hang on, I'm sorry, but what do you mean? But, yep, he broke his own leg.
Bloody hell. I didn't hear about the Redpath injury. What was that one?
Knee, and he's gone for the season.
Ah, wow. That's pretty key
months.
For them. That's very key for them. That just about does them in, I reckon. I don't reckon they can come back from that massive injury count. Anyway, the Saints getting up 11-9 to 9-6 by 15. And then today we had the Lions. I'm so pleased about this result, actually. The Lions getting up 20 goals 8 to 12 goals 19. Shocking kicking by the Bombers. But the Lions, who were much further in front during the game, ended up getting up by 37 points. I am pleased for that club. They needed to win that game. It was at Etihad Stadium. Just gives them a little bit of respite from the media blowtorch that's been on that club and Lepic and all the rest of it. So good for them. The Hawks smacking pretty average Tigers, 16 goals 18, 114 to Richmond, 5 goals 14, 44. And just not long ago, the Giants getting home over the Power. I didn't watch the game, but playing in that bloody weather. God.
Giants, they were kind of out of it a little bit. They couldn't get their forward movement going fluidly, and Port were playing quite well. They were working the conditions better, and then the Giants just clicked.
Yeah.
Good evening, fellow panellists.
Oh, nice of you to come along. We're just I'm just going through the scores, Macca, so I'll finish that off. 11 goals, 13.79 to the Giants, 9 goals, 6.60 to the Power. So with our loss over the Cats, let's quickly look at the ladder. We have the Hawks out in front now on 56 points, and then we have the Log Jam on 48 points, which is pretty much 6 out of the next 7 teams. Giants, Swans, Cats, Eagles, Crows, Bulldogs, and then we have North Melbourne on 44 points, with that win probably sealing the fate of those just outside the The 8, particularly St Kilda, who coming home with a little bit of a run, but shocking percentage. They're on 36 points. Port on 32, Melbourne on 28, along with Collingwood and Richmond. And then we've got Carlton and the Suns on 24 points, Freo on 12, the Lions getting off the deck on 8 points, and the Bombers, where they deserve to be, on the bottom of the ladder on 4 points. So, yeah, that's the general state of play. And, of course, the game that we're all interested in is the game on Saturday night between the Cats and the Crows, billed as a bit of a blockbuster, but the weather really put a kibosh on any sort of high-standard game. And we didn't cope with the conditions, as well as the Cats' game plan. The Cats getting up 12 goals, 13, 85 to the Crows, 7 goals, 13, 55. The Cats ended up winning by 30 points. Nikki, your initial thoughts?
Well, I actually thought even weirdly, we got done by 30 points. I thought our backline didn't do too badly. We didn't have Talia for the entire last half. I have to give credit to Geelong. They very much had a plan, as I said to you earlier, to stop us getting the loose man come in, the third man coming up to do the intercept marks, and they were able to implement that a bit easier, I think, because of the narrowness of the ground. I thought Laird and Brown came back in pretty much like they hadn't missed a beat, which was pleasing to see. But we were making some silly decisions up forward, and it was our half-forward line that kind of let us down.
How about you, Macca? How did you see it, mate?
Mostly the same as Nikki, but as far as who let us down, it was definitely our midfield that let us down, in my opinion, because if you have a look through the stats, their best players were their midfield, and because our midfield wasn't performing as well as it should, our forwards were coming up higher than they would have otherwise come up, and we totally lost our structure for most of the game, in my opinion.
Interesting. I had a slightly different take, but let's just go through some of the head-to-head stats before we get into the nitty-gritty. And there's a couple of stats here that really stand out to me. Disposals was basically the same. They had 223 kicks. The kicks were the same, 223 each. Geelong 191 handballs to 124, so they ended up with about just under 70 more disposals for the match. And this is the first stat that really sticks out for me: 1.8 kicks to handball. Now, we haven't been playing like that at all this season. So we were very much a kicking team on Saturday night. Now, whether that was a strategy because of the conditions or whether it was forced on us by Geelong's pressure, only the team know that. But to me, it was an ineffective strategy, and it certainly moves away from how we've been. Well, certainly that stat, kick to handball, certainly a lot higher than it has been. Most of the other stats, for the most part, are pretty much the same. Source won the hitouts 48 to 39. The other one was, let me find it here. Oh, the thing that sticks out to me is that our actual disposals per scoring shot were exactly the same. Our inside 50s per scoring shot were pretty much the same. Our percentage of inside 50s to score were pretty much the same, and yet they won rather comfortably in the end. That points to me exactly what you were saying, Nikki, about us breaking down across half forward. My own point of view is that it wasn't necessarily our half forward line that was the problem, it was the delivery.
The delivery.
Yeah, but when you say breaking down across half forward, when you haven't got any players there, you're obviously going to break down. Enright was getting so many uncontested possessions, and they usually had one or two other players around him as well. We had no forwards there at all. I know we normally come up high, but because the ball was mainly put in Geelong's half, particularly I'm thinking in the third quarter, our forwards were right up, very too high, and there was nobody. We would just get the ball, and as you said, we did kick a lot more, and we kicked pretty blindly and straight to Enright and Co back there who had a feast. And as Nikki said, they had a pre-game plan of how they were going to structure themselves to stop the way that we run the ball into the forward line, and they really just stopped us dead in our tracks. The ground helps them in that respect, of course, because it's much narrower, so you can actually put the normal press in place with maybe one or two spares to put back.
Now, Macca, I'm going to take you to task on this one because
not me.
Our forward line always play high when we're coming out of defence. Always, right? That's how we. That's hang on. There. I'm going to put you on mute. Our forwards always play high when we're coming out of defence, right? But what we tend to do is move the ball quickly in our defensive transition, which means that we're one out in the forward line. What was happening was that we weren't moving the ball quickly at all, and we weren't moving the ball by hand. So a lot of the time, I was actually looking at this in the replay this afternoon because I couldn't actually watch the game terribly closely last night. A lot of the time, our forwards were actually up ahead of the ball when it was coming into our forward line. So it wasn't that we were playing too deep. It's just that our forwards didn't have time to actually work back, because usually what would happen is that they'd be involved in the transition, and because the ball was getting kicked over their head, they basically weren't where they needed to be to take a mark, and they didn't have enough time to actually get back. So that's the first thing I'll mention. The second thing is borne out in this next stat. 1%ers, Geelong 71% to ours 39. And that, to me, really reflected their work rate versus our work rate. I just think that we simply didn't work hard enough. We didn't work hard enough in defensive transition, and we didn't work hard enough when the ball was coming back the other way. And I think that's what killed us. I think our midfield was shite all night, and we flagged it last week, and we flagged it in Scorpus' previous show. Our midfield was going to have to work really hard, and we were going to have to apply a lot of forward 50 pressure. We did neither of those things, and that's where we lost the game, in my view.
Well, I think you're just reshuffling what I said in a different way.
Not really, because you're saying that our structure broke down. I'm saying that we didn't play to our game plan.
Well, it's the same thing, really, in the long run, because if you don't play to your game plan, and that means your structure's out of place. And you're saying you're saying the reason for that is because of the way that we moved the ball, and that's probably correct. But that integrates into what I'm saying, in the sense that if you aren't moving the ball quickly and you're getting sucked further down the ground because of that, and it's not coming quickly so that you can make the fast break, then you get the same situation.
Yeah, but it's not a structural breakdown.
It's not a structural breakdown. Quickly.
Well, I reckon
just the third quarter, the wrong ones.
No, third quarter was totally a structural breakdown, in the sense that there was no way that we were going to score anything because of the way that we brought the ball out and then nobody there. And
it's not structural breakdown, Macca. It's ball movement, and there's a few key moments. And even though we were even at half time, there were a few key parts of the game that led to what happened in the third quarter, and it all had to do with disposal efficiency. The reason why we were so slow in moving the ball in the third quarter is because we completely lost confidence in our ability to execute disposal. There were periods in the second quarter there, around about 9 minutes to go, where we gave it back we won possession in our defensive half and gave it back to them on the turnover 3 times in a row through unforced errors, just bad kicks. One was out on the full. I think Matty Crouch kicked one out on the full. I think Rory Atkins kicked one to the opposition. And I think our confidence in our ability to move the ball fell away, which meant that in the second half, and particularly in the third quarter, we just refused to move the ball quickly. Brodie Smith was one that a couple of times had the opportunity to move the ball forward and he didn't. Ricky Henderson was another one. Scott Thompson was another one. there were key moments in that second quarter that led to us being so insipid in the third quarter because we just refused to move the ball fast. That's not structural, that's execution.
Yeah, it was very poor execution.
I'm not disagreeing with anything you're saying, but I'm saying that because of that, the structure broke down, and we were never going to get a goal in that third quarter. And for all the reasons you've said, and I reckon combined with the reasons that I've said, and well, we can differ on that, but it doesn't. Where there is no difference is the fact is that we were very, very poor in the way we played. We were very, very poor in our attitude towards the game at times. And as you said, our disposal was absolute shite.
Yeah. Nikki, you were going to say something?
To me, it was that disposal errors, which were just shocking. And the number of times, because I actually watched it with Mum and Dad, pretty much all three of us would just throw our arms up in the air and just go, "Oh, here we go again."
Yeah, it was amateurish at times, and I understand the conditions were poor, but these were turnovers that were unforced. A player that was in the clear and only had to spot up, and he'd kick it over the head, or just sometimes a couple of our disposals. You wondered where the kick was actually intended to go, because where it went, there was actually no Crow player there.
Yeah,
it was horrendous.
They were like. There were a couple the turnovers I were okay with, in the respect that we had a stationary player with his hands up, and so the person kicking the ball was making that person move to the ball, which is what you should be doing. You don't kick it to somebody standing still. It's just, unfortunately, it was too far in.
Well, and the reason
it was being intercepted.
The reason you have stationary players is because the player moves to a position and the ball should be kicked to that position earlier. So the player actually gets to where he wants the ball to go before the kicker has actually got his shit together and actually decided to kick the ball. And that was one of our main problems. They were able to cut off our outlets so easily because we were just so slow about it. And you're only going to get through Geelong's zone because they play they play two halves of the ground. They cluster up around the ball. So if the ball's on our half forward line, they'll cluster up around half forward. But then they'll have 4 or 5 back, a kick and a half behind as well. So they actually play a two-phase zone, if you like. They don't cluster up like Hawthorn do and then spread. They actually spread their players into 2 unique sections of the ground. And that is why whenever we were kicking out of a stoppage or a clearance or a contested situation, we had more players around the ball than they, and therefore they had more players behind the ball. And because we were using a kick out of those situations, it was just ridiculous. It was like watching Bart Simpson walk against the wall repeatedly for 10 minutes. It was hopeless.
Well, I totally agree with you about the Geelong setup because, as you said, they do have virtually a two-part one. One's the normal structural press, but then they have another one behind that too, in case it gets through. And that absolutely slaughtered us. In fact, we played a 5-forward game and we played an extra on ball of most of the game. And the idea was to try and win the clearances and hope that when we got it forward, that whoever the forwards that were going to be there at the time could actually win the ball. But it backfired on us tremendously because while we had one more player than they did, they still beat us around the ball. So I didn't think it was a great day for the coaching panel. I don't think it was a very great day for the players, or most of the players. And, some of the boys like McGovern, 2 possessions for the game. 2 possessions. That's not turning up.
No, and it highlighted something else for me. And there's a couple on the board, and I've been very quiet about Josh Jenkins. And last night highlighted why he is not a 700 or 800 a year player, because whilst he is very good as part of our forward line, we needed someone to take a couple of bloody forward line grabs last night, and Josh just isn't that player. He isn't a player that can go up in a pack and take a mark. And Tex had an ankle issue for half the game, so he was ineffective. And unfortunately, they blocked out McGovern's run to those situations a number of times, and he was ineffective. So if you're going to kick the ball high into forward 50, you want to have a marking target, and that's where we needed Josh to actually impose himself. And whilst he played well in terms of the way Josh Jenkins plays, which is fine, it means that we don't have that marking forward. We don't have that bloke that can take a big, strong grab when needed, like a Tommy Hawkins.
Well, you can't argue against that, but I reckon when Tex is 100% fit, he sort of does help cover that particular role. But in fact, if we cast our mind back at how Tex used to play a couple of years ago before he had his knee problems, he used to take a lot of very, very large marks. But that doesn't seem to be part of his game at the moment.
You'll never see him play like that again because he's got no confidence in that knee, Macca.
I reckon you're right.
He goes up one-handed, and he's almost looking for his landing before it's even considered. You will not see him take pack marks anymore.
No, I have to agree with you. He just doesn't. Well, there hasn't been any real sign of it now since he's come back.
Yeah, and that's why we're playing him high. And he's a good lead up forward. You know, very good, and he's very creative. And him and Lynchy as lead ups is. A real string to our bow. But that part of the reason why we kept getting caught out with their being outnumbered in our forward 50 was for that very reason, that we played Tex and Tommy so high. And that's where we needed JJ to be able to stick a mark. But unfortunately, it was never kicked to his advantage. And when it was put anywhere near him, he had 2 or 3 going up against him. Some individual stats, I reckon, just to...
I'm interested in these, particularly Selwood and Dangerfield.
Well, let me just say, Danger had 36. He had 16 kicks, 20 handballs, 6 tackles, 4 inside 50s. He went at, one moment please, only 61% disposal efficiency, which is probably par for him. 6 clearances. 2 rebound 50s. I thought he was okay without being, overly damaging. I thought Selwood actually cut us up inside a little bit more. He had much more influence on the game. I think he had 34 disposals, 19 kicks, 15 handballs, 4 tackles, 6 inside 50s. And let me have a look here. Went at 70%, 5 clearances. I thought he did. I thought he did the bulk of the grunt work, so I thought he was very good.
Because we kind of cut them out of the game fairly well. It was the others around to step up.
Just maybe having a little technical issue here. Just hang on a sec. How's that? Oh, we're having an issue, aren't we?
Still breaking up.
Hang on 2 seconds. Oh, we just had a dropout. I don't know what's going on there. Something's happened. Sorry guys, for those listening, we're just having a few connection issues which I did flag with this weather. Live radio at its best. Oh, here I am, I'm back. Can you guys hear me now?
It's a little bit robot to us.
Yeah, I think there's a problem. I just got kicked out of mumble, which for those listening is actually our little voice communications things that we use. And you guys are... Yeah, well, you guys sound like that to me, and yet the guys on the chat, or Damp Squid on the chat, reckons that I'm okay. So I think
you're clear now?
Yeah, that's just cleared up for me too.
Yeah, same here.
Hey, Damp Squid, can you hear us okay?
Yeah, I reckon if I can hear you okay, he can too. Are they still robot Damp Squid, or are they coming through better now? All right, here we go.
It was a yay. Woohoo!
All right, so there you go. Go on.
So what I was saying was that the impression I actually got was we did pretty well at, I thought, actually mostly stopping Danger and Selwood. But it was the guys around them that then lifted a little bit. Atkins, to me, was the interesting one because he was often lined up on Bartel. And whilst Atkins, I thought, did quite well in getting off of him and making him accountable, it was just unfortunately his disposal letting him down.
Oh, no, I thought Jimmy torched us, particularly in the second half. He ended up with 34 touches.
Yeah.
Bartel, 5 tackles, 8 inside 50s. He certainly came up fresh after his break. He was going at 73.5% disposal efficiency as well. Had 9 clearances as well, Jimmy Bartel.
Yeah, he really, a top game by him.
Yeah, I actually had him and Enright as the best 2 on the ground. Which is a bit of an indictment. The guy's 103 years old.
That's right. You're absolutely right.
Well, there's a question about, this is a conversation we can have afterwards, but just as an aside, you want to compare Jimmy Bartel at 300 games to Scotty Thompson at 300 games and tell me who's going better.
Well, obviously Bartel, but I think that Tomo has always played a little bit like a battering ram, and I think it's starting to, their age and the past is starting to catch up with him, because I thought he really was, he tried his bum off, but he was quite sluggish, I thought.
Oh, yeah. Look, let me go through some of the Adelaide stats quickly. We had Matty Crouch, our leading disposal winner, on 31, 19 kicks, 12 handballs. He had 4 marks, 8 tackles, 1 inside 50, only went at 61%, which is probably for most of the team about the same. Unfortunately, 7 clangers, which is a bit of a blot on his game at the moment. 3 clearances, 2 rebound 50s. Wasn't a bad game by Matt. Got a lot of ball, obviously, and got amongst it a fair bit. Doesn't hurt opposition teams yet with his disposal, with his possessions. For 31 touches, you want to get a little bit more hurt factor, and it shows in his stats. I was looking at his metres gained stat the other day, and I think it's only something like 250 odd metres average, which isn't huge for a midfielder. We had Jared Lyons on 24. I thought he was in and out. 13 kicks, 11 handballs, 3 marks, 7 tackles, 5 inside 50. So he's still being played as that distributor. But again, only 62.5%, 4 clangers, 3 clearances. Not Jared's best game, and I tell you what, he had that shot for goal that he kicked into the man on the mark. That's just unforgivable, and that was really clutch, because if we could have just jagged that one, it would have kept us a little bit more in touch, and unfortunately that was just about, you could see if your heads drop after that one.
Yeah, I said to Mrs. Macca at the time when he was going to have that shot, oh, thank God it's him. And he's
that's what I thought.
Not Charlie.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I said, Nikki. Thank God it's not Charlie, because I said Lyons will kick this because he's a very good shot for goal. And we all got egg on our face, and we got kicked up the bum like we deserved.
Yeah. Lairdy, 22 touches as well, 13 and 9, 6 marks, 4 tackles, 2 inside 50s. Went at 72, 8 clangers though, and that's something that I did notice about Rory's game, and where he's just a little bit off his touch. He did turn the ball over a little bit, and just looked a little bit like he lost his composure once or twice there under pressure. So first game back, I guess you can forgive him that, but that was probably the thing that stood out to me. Bradley Crouch, 21. Tried really hard, I thought. 7 tackles, 3 inside 50s. Went at 71.5. 4 clearances. I thought he tried hard, Brad. I thought he tried to create something. I don't like... There's a couple of players that are starting to get into this habit of handballing over their head. Even Tex is overdoing it with a whole handball over the head. You can do the Hollywood handball occasionally, but it's starting to creep in. Him and Douglas and Brad Crouch did it a couple of times to ill effect. It got turned over. And to me, the handball over the head is always a sign that a player is panicking under pressure. And I don't like seeing that in Brad's game. I thought Brodie Smith was all right in patches. 13, wrong page here. 20 disposals. He had 15 kicks, 5 handballs, 5 marks, 4 tackles. Only 1 inside 50. We need him drilling it in a bit more than that. But again, turned it over a little bit. 2 clearances, 7 rebound 50s though, so he worked hard off halfback. I actually thought our best player working down the list was Jakey Lever. Particularly in the second half, I thought he played quite well. Only got the 14... Oh, sorry, wrong page again. Bloody hell. Got the 15 disposals, 11 and 4, but took 7 intercept marks, a couple of tackles, 3 inside 50s as well, and went at 93% disposal efficiency, so he was certainly the outlier with that stat. 3 rebound 50s as well, so I didn't think he had a bad game. Charlie Cameron, this is going to be a contentious one, but I actually think for all his stuff up in front of goal, I thought he was actually really good value for us.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. No argument about that. I thought he had a very, very good game, and which was marred by his kicking for goal. The rest of his game was excellent.
Yep, I
Which
thought so
we know
too.
he's struggled with that goal kicking. And the fact to me was that every time he had it, even though he'd missed those previous ones, he still went back and had a go. Because he was within range.
Nikki, they were talking about him missing the goals that he should have got. And one of his teammates said that on the TV, that at training, he never misses them. You can back him every time. Yet I think it must be nerves.
Charlie, Macca, you know what I didn't see that I wish I saw? Whenever Charlie's lining up for goal, Tex Walker should be going up to him and settling him down and telling him, aim for the left post, aim for the right post, whatever. There's no leadership around Charlie at the moment. There's no one, and I know they probably feel like they should be just letting him go and doing his thing, but he does get nervous and he does need a leader of the club, a leader of the team, just to go up to him and just tell him to take a moment, all right? Because at the moment, he's hopeless in front of goals, and if it continues, he'll be back to where he was a couple of years ago. But his stats were really good: 18 disposals, 14 and 4. He had 5 marks. Unfortunately, kicked 3 behinds, 4 tackles, 4 inside 50s. He was only went at 38.9% disposal efficiency. So that's unfortunate. 2 marks inside 50 though, so at least he was making space, 3 clearances as well. So I thought, apart from his goal kicking, Charlie probably looked the most likely in our midfield rotations and around the ground.
Well, in terms of being dynamic and making something happen, you're 100% right. I thought you're a little bit harsh on Lyons because he played. I know he's a vanilla type player, but I thought that he at least can hold his head up and say that he did give it his best. And, I mean, he had 24 possessions, which is about his norm, whereas some of the other boys, they were well down.
Yeah, and 12 contested, so he was inside and outside. So possibly, I just felt like he faded in and out of the game a bit, Macca.
He'll never ever dominate a game because he's not that type. But he's that fill-in type where when your big guns are off the ball, at least he can hold his own.
Yeah, well, that's true. I mean, they blanketed Sloaney pretty well. Sloaney only the 22 disposals, so he was down on his usual count. 5 tackles, 2 inside 50s. But again, 59% disposal efficiency, 4 clangers. He did have 6 clearances, 11 contested possessions. But I thought that Rory was pretty well held. and they rolled various players on him at times. Danger was on him at times. Guthrie was on him, but they didn't give him much latitude. That's for sure.
Yeah, you're 100% right. They had a rolling tag on him.
Yep, they just made him very accountable. I thought, aside from Stanley getting off the hook inside 50, I thought Source did okay in the one-on-ones, the clearances. I thought he rucked well. He gave us a lot of good looks at the ball. He got 41 hit-outs. He's never going to be a defending ruckman, he's not, particularly against a Reece Stanley, who's a bloody athlete,
And he quite rightly was looking around oftentimes going, well, where was the defence to help me out? Because that's their job.
Yeah, you're quite right. Right there.
The first one was definitely Source just not going with him. But certainly the second two, there needed to be a chop out. Because the commentary even stated, and I agreed with them, that they had a plan when Stanley drifted forward. They cleared out the key, basically, the lane in front of goals. They cleared it out and let him lead into it.
Yeah.
Now, we should have been awake to that and blocking up space. And I did notice that we did have a lot of spectators in defence. Even though defence, I thought, played pretty well individually, I didn't feel that they were terribly well coordinated, and particularly in that circumstance with Stanley. There are a lot of blokes that were in no man's land. They were neither in the contest or out the contest. They were just sort of caught halfway.
You're 100% right about that, because Doug Pikey's always talking about our team defence, and some members of the team couldn't see a great big alleyway that Stanley had to lead into.
Yeah, exactly. Wayne's World just mentioned about a tackle count. I might have missed that, but it does also feed into what I was saying, Wayne, about their 1%ers. They just worked harder, I felt. They worked a lot harder around the ball, around the contest. Anyone else that I've failed to mention? I thought Tommy Lynch did try. Cheney was solid.
Yeah, he tried hard. I was actually, there was one little passage of play which I quite liked that Hardigan did. He was under quite a bit of pressure up forward. And I think he had about 2, maybe 3. We had one Geelong player sort of about to tackle him and 2 coming at him. And the ball's just there and he could see our player. He did a beautiful little toe poke off the ground and it just hit our player on the chest and allowed them to run free. Just that little vision in traffic, because often a lot of people will look at Hardigan and they go, oh, he's big and he's slow. We know he's not slow. And he's not dumb. And I quite like that even though we were under so much pressure, he still was willing to take that risk.
Well, yeah, but he makes me hold my breath all the time because I don't know what he's going to do. Quite seriously, Nikki, in our back lines, when he's going for the ball or when he's got the ball, it scares me more than any other member of our defence.
He's better than he used to be, Macca. Better than he used to be.
He's improving. He's improving. But I thought that he sort of reverted back a little bit on Saturday night.
No, he went at 78% disposal efficiency. The one I did notice something about Kyle, though, and he's not a midfielder, so he's probably not to blame, but something that he did led to a Geelong goal in the third quarter, and it was quite noticeable. I don't know whether you recall, at one stage he was chasing or had touch on Selwood as they were chasing a ball through the middle of the ground, and it got to a situation where he'd basically held out Selwood so that a Crow could come in and pick the ball up, and that Crow had a Geelong player on his hammer as well. Now, as soon as the Crow player got to the ball, Kyle basically ran back as if he was running back to cover his opponent. As a result, they got a 2-on-1 situation against our guy that had come in and picked up the ball, and I can't remember who it was. Obviously, they forced the possession and got the possession kicked in their forward 50 in goal. Kyle really needed to stay in that contest, and that just to me illustrated that whilst Kyle is very good at his role, he's still not blessed with footy smarts as such, because he really needed to kill that contest and cause a stoppage. But the moment that someone else had accountability for picking up the ball, Kyle not only did he just step back from the contest, he actually ran away from the contest.
Yeah,
if I can find the vision, I'll post the vision if I can find it. Because it was almost amateurish. Like, Kyle, where are you going? I actually thought it was Henderson at first. I thought it was 45, and then it was Hartigan. I thought, what the hell are you doing? He basically ran out of the screen. Like he
you were very kind. You're very kind. I didn't say what you said. I said WTF, I can tell you that. Because I remember the incident. I just couldn't believe it. He just pissed off and left it.
He did. He just let no shepherd, no anything, no killing the contest. He just basically, all right, someone else is there now. I'll piss off and back and do my job. It's like, oh, bloody hell.
That was a shocker. That's the sort of thing I am talking about. That overall, most of his game is good, but he's just capable of that costly brain fade.
Well, and let's face it, he's there as a fullback, and he does that. He's been doing that job particularly well. And we certainly can't knock him for that. But that was just one moment where it just blew my mind. It's like, what are you doing? I thought Tomo was disappointing. I thought Richie Douglas was disappointing. I thought Henderson was ineffective.
Henderson squibbed.
Yep.
Yes,
he did.
We saw it. We all saw it. Look, Hendo's he's annoying because he's got a lot of talent, a lot of ability. He's got a nice long kick on him. But let's face it. When it comes down to winning the games that count, he's not going to be the man that does it for you. So I think you've got to play the people that can do it, and he's not it.
No, I agree with you. He's one of those tantalising footballers, isn't he, Macca? He's got all the tools. He's got pace. He's got height. He's got a good leg. You think he's valuable, but you put him on a footy field and he just makes you want to throw up. It just honestly, he's in finals pressure footy, or in wet nights like we had on Saturday night. He's of no use whatsoever. I would have much preferred to see Seaman in that team. He gives you a far better account of himself, even on his bad days. And along with D-Mac, they're just not reliable in the real heat of battle. And Hendo was found out, I thought. Rory Atkins, I thought, was in and out. He had a really good patch during the middle of the game. Showed a bit of composure. Did turn the ball over a little bit, but also probably didn't get quite involved at key moments.
His first half was a stinker. He only had one possession first quarter, 3 possessions in the second quarter, and his second half was, as you said, was an improvement. He got 10 possessions in total in the second half, but he also actually made a few clangers with his kicking, which he normally doesn't do. But I thought it was a subpar performance from him, really.
Yeah, and he went at 50% disposal efficiency, and I reckon those 3 second quarter disposals, Macca, would have been in the last 5 minutes of the second quarter, because that's when I actually noticed that he was playing. He did a couple of nice things just before half time. There's our midfield really got shown up, and it really shows what we're relying on at the moment, which is good rebound defence, dynamic players around the forwards. Because our midfield is very one-paced and not, or prone to not working hard enough in the heat of battle, and they just left us for dead in transition. We did not work back hard enough. Our team defence fell down far too often, particularly in that third quarter.
The point comes up then. They talk about Tomo. Will he go on next year, or won't he go on? Our problem really is that I don't know if Brad Crouch stays, and I hope he does. I don't think we could afford to have Tomo there for the very reason that you just said. We are a slow midfield, and we've got to somehow prize somebody with a bit of pace from somewhere else.
Yep. From where? Who knows? But you're right. We need, whether we keep working on Charlie's engine. As much as I like Eddie, I don't think Eddie's much value in those coming through the centre, because his ball handling is just not sure enough. He doesn't one-take anything. And up forward, when he can jig and you know, all that around the place, it's not so bad. But in the centre, when you need to be clean, Eddie's very rarely a one-take player. And once he's missed his opportunity, he tends to stand back and spectate in the middle of the ground. Charlie will give you much more pressure in the middle of the ground, and I think he's worth persevering with, but I don't think he's necessarily the answer. As for Tomo Macca, I don't know, and I don't know about you, Nick, but someone's going to have to make a call. And, you know, do we carry him into finals, or do we make a really, really, really tough call and give Ellis Yeoman a chance to come in and see whether he can be that more dynamic player inside?
Well, I don't think it'll happen this year, you know, come what may, but I'm really thinking long term that we can't go on with a midfield which is as slow as what we've got.
After being at the SANFL on the weekend, Wig is a lot quicker. Wig does more running around the ground. I think it could be Wig who comes in, if anything.
That would disappoint me.
Is he good enough, Nikki?
We've been very much fast-tracking his development in the SANFL. And the good thing is that the opposition teams very much target Grigg, and they've been nullifying Grigg all year. Ellis Yeoman gets a bit of attention, so he fades in and out. But to me, the games that I've seen, the consistent performances have been from Wig. And for a little guy, God, he can tackle hard, and he's not afraid to do it. He's got a nice little burst of speed that he'll use every so often. He hasn't done those amazing long kicks that we know he can do. But I think that's more a little bit to do with the SANFL.
Style of game.
And I think you actually put him in an AFL team. That's a hell of a weapon.
Well, we do need something, and I would like to, at the very least, Macca, I would like to see them rest Scotty for the next one, if not two matches. And if they're going to give, I think we said this last week, didn't we, Nick, for Harry Wigg? If not now, then never for this season. I think he deserves a run against the Bombers and probably against the Lions as well. And I think it needs to be either Richie Douglas or Scott Thompson that comes out. And you know what? I wouldn't actually mind both of them coming out and give CY a bit of a run as well. I think they're both CY's top of the disposal count every week in the twos. We know he can play at the level. He showed us that at the beginning of last season. I'd like to see... Douglas has given us nothing and will not gain anything from getting 25 posies against Essendon next week. I think we need to put those boys in and see what they can do.
Well, I think you're right. I think Tomo rested next week would be a very good idea, both for Tomo and for the team. And whether it's Wig or whether it's CEY, I don't know. But for a long-term point of view, I think it probably will be Wig, but maybe short-term at CEY.
All right, so two questions before we bail out and go to the SANFL quickly. The first question is on Mitch McGovern. What's your thoughts? Do we give him a rest and bring Miller in, or do we need to leave him in as that marking forward?
I'd leave him in.
Well, I was going to disagree. I just did not like his game at all. I mean, I didn't even know he was playing in the first half, and he didn't touch leather, so... no, you can't have a player playing that only gets two positions, no matter what position they're playing in. And his form has been fading just a little bit. And I think just a week or two out of it, and then bring him back in fresh, I think we'll do him good.
Nikki?
Miller is a completely different player because he's the Charlie Eddie Lynch role. So, to me, that's not a like-for-like swap.
Well, the question is really, does Mitch stay in or does he go out?
Yeah.
Irrespective of who brings...
who comes in. Because
what I'm interested in is what you think.
You've got to see what's coming underneath.
Yeah.
I would leave him in against a lower team just to see and challenge him, right? We want to see you pick up a bit more. and to see if he can, just to get that confidence going. Because we've seen him in games that he's a bit of a confidence player, and he's young. So I think I'd leave him in for Essendon. But if he's, again, low possessions and the impact isn't there that we want from him, then, yeah, he's definitely out against Brisbane.
But I tell you what, though, Nikki, I think he's going to be a star in the making. Don't get me wrong. I like the lad.
Oh, yeah.
I think he's got a big, big future. But this often happens with people who play their first year of AFL footy. It's a tough game. And it's at a level that they haven't played before. And in their first year, and sometimes even in their second year, they start to burn out a little bit about 2/3 of the way through the season. And I think McGovern's a classic example of that.
Yeah, my own personal view is that he needs to be in at finals time, but I don't think he would. A rest would do him any harm. I think he was a bit of a victim of the whole setup on Saturday night. I think he was often the lone guy up forward, in a sea of blue and white, because he certainly wasn't playing that hit up as much as Lynchy and Tex. But we need more from him. So, I think he's in our best 22 when he's playing well, and I'd like to see him come back in for finals. I wouldn't mind giving someone else a bit of a crack, even maybe a Ramsey or someone like that.
Ramsey or Deer.
I mean, obviously Menzel would have been the one, and it would be great, but obviously he's out injured, so that's no good. Harry Deer, maybe, if we want a taller marking option, or Ramsey's a little bit more mobile, isn't he?
He is.
Yeah.
So, but I don't think Ramsey will be on our list next year.
You don't reckon?
No, he will.
I don't think so, Nikki. I don't reckon he's done enough. He's been there 2 years.
No. I've been watching the SANFL. He's actually one of our good players every week.
Well, he didn't have much of the ball on the weekend when we get to it.
Yeah, but not many of them did.
Well, no, but I still think
that's not the point.
Nikki, where's he going to play long term in the AFL? He's not.
He's a swingman. He can play forward and he can play back.
Yeah, I don't think he will. I think he's just one of those that unfortunately can play pretty good SANFL but won't make it at AFL level because I don't think he's got any special weapons.
Good honest player, you reckon, Macca?
That's my summation of him, and he is a good honest player, but I can't see him being AFL.
Yeah. All right. The other question that I wanted to ask before we move on, Squibby's giving me avatar advice. Now, this is not a time or place, Squibby. Shut up for a minute. The other question I'd pose you guys, you're Don Pike, and it's 10 minutes into the third quarter and you can see the momentum shifting. Do you decide, stuff it, we're going to man up and play man on man, or are you going to continue to see the ball getting bombed into a sea of blue and white? Do you make the change and man up the loose man in our forward 50?
Yeah, we do. You summed it up beautifully there. I thought I think our coaching panel's been very, very good this year, but everybody has a shit night and they had a shit night. They just didn't make the appropriate changes that they should have made, and I think Don Pike even said as much after the game when he did his 3 minutes after match summary. 3 minutes. That's all he gave him, and really no facts at all. But he did admit that the coaching panel didn't have a good night, and I'd say that's correct.
Nick?
Depends on what you want out of the game as to what you then do.
You want to win it, don't you?
Yeah, well, sometimes yes and no. You still want to win it.
Come on, it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes into the third quarter.
Yeah, no, it's 7 minutes into the third, and we had kept with them for the first half.
Yeah.
Evenly, even not playing that well, and the less said about the throws they did, etc., that were never paid. And Cameron Ling, who's definitely going to be Cockwomble and Numbnut of the week because he's got no idea. I would, man up that loose man because it wasn't working for us.
What things you say, man on man all around the ground, though, Nikki?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have actually, I certainly would have manned up there loose up forward, But I would have actually gone. I would have changed up because the game opened up in the third quarter for them. We just weren't. They were leading us to the ball anyway. So in that situation, oh shit, here we go. In that situation, I would have certainly manned up on Enright, and I probably would have just gone man on man to try and stop that momentum. Because once they got a roll, we actually didn't do anything to stop it. So let me just read this post by our chat person here, Mark Angus. Says something to do with the loose man defence. Enright ran the show. Move lever forward. Yeah, I actually like Squibby's suggestion about Hendo. Hendo could have been used a little bit more, I reckon. And he might have been someone there that might have just caused a few problems. Someone with a little bit of pace and a little bit of spring. He certainly wasn't giving us much else. But at the very least, I was surprised that we didn't man up, Macca, I've got to say.
Yeah, no, I think you're definitely right there.
Well, any final comments? Because I think we've just about done that one to death.
Well,
we sucked.
Well, that was a good summary, I suppose. We didn't do... Look, the interesting thing is, if you take the first, second and last quarters, and we didn't play well, and yet if you add up the difference of in scores in those three quarters of the two sides, there isn't very much difference at all, less than a goal, I think.
Correct.
And it's just that one quarter where they just blew us apart. They literally blew us apart, and that's why we had to go down the path that you said, Feenix. We really had to go man on man or do something quite radical because following all the conventional stuff wasn't working. So when that doesn't work, you've just got to do something that, even if you throw your whole 18 players into the back line or something like that, you have to do something very radical, very different to try and stop that momentum that they had. And once you stop the momentum, then you've got a bit of a chance of creating your own. But we weren't just pissing into a win; we were pissing into a gale into that third quarter.
Well, and it really was very noticeable that end of the ground was easier to score at. It had the protection of the stand and all that sort of stuff. That was where all the action was happening. So I don't actually mind what you said. I would have actually got players behind the ball and just tried to kill the momentum for a bit so that we could reset. Because late in that third, we did have a couple of opportunities. And if we'd have been able to force those opportunities a little bit earlier, just by closing up space, for 5 minutes or so during that third quarter, the damage wouldn't have been as great. But it was almost a bridge too far at three-quarter time.
And the other thing I'd like to say about the game in summary is that I think the ball's in Pikey's camp now. I think that's mixed metaphors, I think. But
court. Ball's in his court.
It can be whatever it bloody likes. But
thanks, Mrs. Macca.
She's liking all the disagreeing tonight. It's excellent. But coming back to what I was going to say, the ball is in Pikey's court, and and he really, I think, has to make a bit of a statement in the sense of players that didn't really put in. You don't disrupt the whole side, but there has to be one or two changes to let people know that performances like that are not acceptable.
Nick, what do you reckon?
What Macca said.
Okay. I tend to agree too, as I said. Couple out, give a couple of blokes an opportunity, freshen a couple of blokes up, and that was, I reckon that was, apart from Seedsman, in terms of players available, that was probably our best 22 on the park on Saturday night, and we've been just going since the bye, I reckon, and my impression was that we'd set ourselves for this game, but as it turns out, that was a fair form line since the bye, Macca, and I think we do need to shake it up a little bit, and we've got the perfect couple of games to do it, so it'll be interesting to see. I think Pikey's a bit old school, let the 22 take responsibility, but not against Essendon. That's always going to be a win, so I think you can that, and chuck a few around and see what happens.
Yeah, because taking responsibility can be good and it can be bad. If you do something really bad, well, then you pay a price for it. And I think the price for it has to be a rest for a week or two. So, and this is the opportunity, as you said.
Yeah, I mean, that said, percentage is really important, so we can't weaken the team, but I don't think we weaken the team that much by giving Dougie and Tomo a rest, for example, and maybe Mitchie McGovern. I don't think we lose a hell of a lot. Yeah. Anyway, we're going a little bit over time, so let's quickly go through the SANFL result. And another loss to the SANFL Crows. The Eagles getting up 10 goals, 13-73 to us, 8 goals, 5-53. Again, a third quarter did us in by the looks of it. That's where they got their little break, kicking 3 goals, 5 to a goal in the third quarter. And that's basically where the game was won and lost. Nikki, you'll be able to confirm that?
Yeah, I think it was interesting because Dad, after the game, he just looked at me and said, I don't think I've been to an SANFL game this year where they've actually won the midfield.
Mm.
And I think what a lot of it comes down to is they're very conscious to tag Greg. He got in a nice few push and shoves and punch-ups, as Greg is wont to do, because he doesn't take a step backwards. I think the opposition will often rove to O'Brien's taps.
Yep.
And whilst he gets his hands first on it, it's not going to our advantage, so that needs a little bit of work on. We did make quite a good comeback in the fourth. And then there was just that little bit of the lapse, and they got a couple of goals, but they had to be like they were against Melbourne. They were outside 50 initially. Yep. They were the only way they were scoring. Yep. Our defence was doing pretty good. Hampton worked his way into it nicely. I noticed that on pretty much every kick out, we wanted him to take them when he was on field. Okay. And he did a couple of, I think people will be really pleased to see, just that shrugging of the tackle. Somebody's tackling and he just keeps going, and they've got no way to stop him.
So here's a question. Does he come in?
That's what I wonder. Enough? I don't think he's quite fit enough yet. I think he needs maybe a couple. Maybe one.
You could bring him in against the Bombers, though, or Brisbane.
You could.
You could if you only plan to play him perhaps for, say, 40 to 50% of the time as part of your rotations. It wouldn't be a silly thing to do, but that's presuming that he could do that.
Mm. Let me just go through a couple of the stats. The usual suspects on top. Ellis Yeoman, again, 30 disposals, but only 9 kicks. Again, it doesn't hurt you enough when you're handballing the ball 21 times. 4 marks, 2 tackles, 7 clearances, 2 inside 50s. So the usual solid game. And would I be right? I never saw the game, Nick, but I'd imagine that he got a lot of the ball but didn't necessarily hurt the Eagles terribly much.
Yeah.
Yep. Harry Wigg, 25 posies, 18 kicks, 7 handballs. That's the ratio you want. 10 marks too, 6 tackles. 2 clearances, 4 inside 50s. That's a solid game. 121 Dream Team points. That's a solid game from Harry Wigg. He'd have to be coming in next week. If he's in any sort of calculations at all, he has to. On that game, he has to come in next week. Griggy, 24, 13, 11, 5 marks, couple of clearances.
Kicked a couple of important goals.
1 goal.
Well, there you go. The one important goal. I think he helped. No, he helped with another one.
Right. Okay.
That's what I was trying to remember.
Seed got 23, 17 kicks, 6 handballs, 10 marks as well, which is good. 4 inside 50s, a couple of clearances, 4 rebound 50s as well. Seems like a pretty solid game, Nick, from the Seed.
Yeah, nice and solid. Was getting back in defence to help out where possible.
Yeah.
And running forward.
Would you bring him in for Henderson this week, Nikki?
Easily. That's as I said last week. I thought Henderson should be, even though Henderson had played a good game up against Geelong, I would have preferred Seaman in the team, not Henderson. And I think that was borne out.
Yeah, he would. I'm sure he would have done better because Hendo's still Hendo.
So
yeah, and Geelong like to play physical, and Seaman doesn't mind that.
So here's the thing. It's sounding like we could make up to 6 changes, theoretically.
Which you wouldn't do.
Because
we won't do that.
There's a obviously we're talking about resting Tomo and or Dougie. So there's two. Mitchy McGovern, there's a third. We're looking at bringing Riley O'Brien in maybe to give Sauce a rest. There's four.
No. Sauce doesn't like rest.
I know he doesn't like it, but it's a coaching call. We're talking about Henderson coming out for the seed. There's 5 changes. And then you can make a case for Kirtley Hampton as well. There's 6 changes. I'll tell you what, that'll be an interesting selection night. And then we got, six potentially 6 changes. I don't think we'll see more than 2.
Yeah, that's too many.
No, I agree. It'll only be a couple, and it's quite possible if they did want to have a look at, say, 2 or 3 of them, they might even rotate them over the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, that probably the more likely. I reckon you might see Riley O'Brien get a game. He played a fair amount of time up forward by the looks of it. Nick kicked a couple of goals.
Yeah, he always does that. Him and Hunter.
Yeah, because they both shared
they spend a bit of time on ground still, playing up forward.
Yeah. Yeah, both had the 14 hit-outs each for 28 for the match. Rob going down and kicking a couple, which is good. He seems to have had a decent game, 6 marks, 16 posies. It's going to be a very interesting selection week because it'll be... I think most of us on the big footy board certainly think that there's a few people that need to be shuffled around. It'll be very interesting to see what the selection panel, how they react to what was, in the end, not the effort we were hoping for from the players.
No, definitely not.
Not acceptable.
Just a question for you, Nikki, on Riley O'Brien. When I first set eyes on him, he is a worse kick than you described yourself as being. and
he can kick further than me.
Has he improved his kicking? And also, if he has, will he be good enough at this stage to ruck at AFL level?
The issue for him is more his composure and the trust in his kick. Those set shots, he panicked, and he was playing his first AFL games in his first season. So you can... But if you'd also seen those same games, around the ground, he's very fluent, and it's quite a nice kick that he does have on him. It's just he panics up forward. He's now settled a lot more. I think they've done some really good work on him. That at the start of the year, he was, as soon as he'd mark it in the forward 50, he just looked to pass it off. He did not even want to try. And now he marks it, it's like, okay, yeah, I'm going to go back and kick this. So he's got a lot more confidence in it. I think they've worked out how his head works, in a way.
And when he played those couple of games, and after a couple of kicks, and what I call them Nicky type kicks, he was so scared by one stage he was 20 metres out from goal. He's trying to pass the ball off. Yeah,
and he stopped doing that in the SANFL. He's got a lot more composure and a lot more belief in himself, which is really nice to see. To me, he's very like Sauce. He's almost like another clone of him in a way, because he's such a big, solid body. Oh, and he actually did a really great tackle on the weekend, because there's a shorter plane coming at him, and he made sure that he just got that little bit lower to not give away a high free kick. And it was a really quick decision that he would have had to make in order to do that. And I think that was actually one of the most pleasing things I saw from him on the weekend.
Well, on that note, we've probably bored everyone enough. Back to the pack for the Crows this week, back to the drawing board in some respects. Certainly the Cats seem to have our measure at the moment, so it'll be interesting to see how that all pans out if we happen to meet them in September. But not the end of the world. That's the first loss after a good streak of 8 wins either side of the break, so we can't really... complain, and there's been some pretty good wins amongst those. So a couple of games to reset now and then shoot into the finals.
And how many games to go until the final?
4.
So last time we played Geelong, we got beaten. Maybe. We had an 8-game winning
5.
streak. So can we have another 8-game winning streak? That'd be nice.
We can have 5. I think that the next couple of games too, it's very important that while we do give a couple of guys a go, that we reset our team and our structures to make sure that they're working properly, but also at the same time we must get a good percentage, because I think whether we finish second or whether we finish fourth or fifth or sixth might well depend on that. And so we must keep winning. B, we've got to win well, but we've also got to make sure that we give a couple of guys a go.
Yep, very important percentage with so many teams log jammed. Percentage will see teams inside or outside the top four this year. It won't just be wins, losses. So vitally important. And most of the teams, apart from us, have already had a crack at Brisbane and Essendon. So now it's our opportunity.
They also play each other a bit. Mm-hmm. So we've got a small advantage here that a few of them actually play each other.
Yeah, I did a ladder predictor before we came on tonight, and I still have us finishing third or fourth. So it's not the end of the world, but we do need to win well over the next couple. But on that note, guys, we'd better call it a night. So thank you both for joining me tonight. Apologies to those who are listening for the slight technical issue we had earlier on, but I'm just about to go and build an ark because I think that's how bad the weather is at the moment.
Can we blame the bomb?
No, we can't blame... Yes, blame the bomb. See you, Macca. See you, Nikki.
See you, folks. Bye.